Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cables to Clouds podcast. I'm your host this week, Tim, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chris. I'm at Carpe DMVPN on Blue Sky, and Chris is at BGP Main on Blue Sky, if I could speak correctly. And with us is a returning guest, good friend of the podcast, so we're lucky to have him. Nico Vibert, would you like to... actually, I don't remember. Nico, are you on... I don't remember. Are you on Blue Sky yet, Nico? Or you don't do the social...
No. Well, I used to be on Twitter and pretty active, but I left that... Yeah,
that was good. That was a good move. Good move.
Pretty active on LinkedIn with videos and city blog posts.
Yes.
That's where you'll find me.
Yep. Excellent. And just in case, so we've had you on the podcast before. It was an excellent episode talking about Kubernetes and Cilium. And but for the people who may not have heard or seen that episode, go ahead and quickly reintroduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm a senior staff technical marketing engineer at Isovalent / Cisco. And I background is network engineering. I've been in network for about 20 years now. Did my CCNA, CCNP, CCIE back in the days. Was CCIE for about 10 years until I let it go. And worked for Cisco for a while. And then I was boomerang back in through the acquisition of Isovalent by Cisco and last year. So yeah, just happy to be back on this podcast.
Yeah, we're definitely happy to have you back. And actually, you came up with a really cool topic, and that's why we brought you back. And let me see if I can read this correctly, just make sure I'm getting it right. So we were talking on LinkedIn a little bit, and you were like, what I really love to tackle was this idea of the identity crisis of cloud networking, specifically what's cloud networking and what it is, what it isn't. And I just realized that, there's so many opinions on this that, It's a great topic, and I'm sure if you talk to 5 engineers, you'll get 10 different opinions, right? So I love it. So let's just kick it off there. What made you think of this topic, and because obviously this comes from somewhere. You've got opinions on this. I'd love to hear.
Well, I guess as a technical marketing engineer, one of my responsibilities is to work with analysts. Like the likes of Gardner and Forrester, that kind of people, and answer questionnaires about our product and where we fit, and obviously let them, rank stack us against other companies in the quadrant, right? And I was recently answering one such query about cloud networking, and I looked at all the different vendors, and I was like, hang on, are these guys cloud networking? And you just look at the list of people we were being compared with. It was like apples and oranges, lemons. I don't know. It was just a bunch of different companies. And I just got thinking, what is even cloud networking? And you guys, you've had a cloud networking podcast for a couple of years now.
A couple of years, yep.
Yeah. And you probably, even between yourself, have a different definition of what cloud networking might be. So
no, it's funny to hear you say this, because since I became a TME, one of the things I probably hate most are those 40-page report questionnaires about, hey, here's fill out 40 pages of why you fit into this quadrant and how you're better. And usually they're like, oh, don't talk about your competitors in here. But then you get to see, like you said, you go look at the quote unquote magic quadrant or whatever. They've all got their own version of stack ranking vendors. And you're looking at them like, huh? Why am I? These guys are like SSE or something. They got nothing to do with what I do, right? Oh, so absolutely.
All right. So I'll ask a question then. Who do you think was on this cloud networking? Who else? We have Isovalent, which, as I said, is now part of Cisco. And there might be some that you think, oh yeah, of course, that's a cloud networking company. And there might be some that was like, hang on. So give me your guesses.
Versus who is versus who isn't?
Well, who do you think is on it?
There's a list. Who would be on the cloud networking list?
Yeah, I've got the list. So I'll tell you if you're correct or not.
Nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would hope our current employer is on there as well.
I'm sure Aviatrix has got to be on there somewhere. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so obviously Alkira would. I mean, I say obviously, but I believe that Alkira would qualify. And I feel like we're like passing judgment on. I feel like an asshole. Like we're just passing judgment on these companies. But no, I mean, I think from a focused cloud networking perspective, yeah. I mean, I think Alkira would fit the bill for that. Prosimo probably did before it went under, right? I mean, obviously, Isovalent did. Calico's own, is it Tigera's the company that actually does Calico? Is that right?
Yeah, they're actually not on it, but I suppose they could be because they are, offer a similar product to what we do.
Yeah, well, okay. Now this is, of course, because I only just started to get into the Kubernetes stuff within the last few weeks, and I went straight to Cilium because I already knew you, and I was very familiar with the labs and everything that you pointed me towards. But then I was reading something else, and I was like, oh, I should take a look at Calico, and it's not the same, and I don't want to compare the two products, but I was like, just from a, it's a CNI plugin, right? Like it fits at least the Kubernetes CNI. And again, this gets into the whole cloud networking thing. Well, which, it's technically Kubernetes networking, right, which could be running in the cloud. So yeah, you can see how it automatically already we're starting to draw lines, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think if I had to guess, I would have said Aviatrix and Prosimo and Alkira because they're kind of for me like obvious cloud networking companies. But then I saw Cisco and Arista, Juniper. Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Makes sense.
I saw F5.
Yeah, that's like a fair point, right? They route packets, but their actual value prop and application is in the load balancing, right? So that's a fair point. Oh no, didn't F5 bought somebody though a few years ago? What was the name of that company? They bought a multi-cloud.
Yeah, that's about Nginx, sorry.
They have an Nginx, yeah.
Well, no, I'll have to look it up. They bought an actual company that they were like, but then they kind of buried it. They never came out with the product. They actually had a quote unquote multi-cloud product, and they never came out with it. Now I'll have to go find it. Well, Cloudflare actually just today, right?
Yeah.
Had a press release about a new MCNS product. Did you see it?
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, they acquired a company called Nepheli. I think it was about a year ago, right? And now it's being called like. Of course, they've dubbed their branded Magic moniker onto the front of it now, but it just like that seems like an orchestration thing. So I think as we open this up, that kind of speaks to your point, Nico. Like, what is cloud networking? Like, we have companies just doing maybe like Kubernetes networking, and then maybe multi-cloud networking, and then something as simple as just orchestrating the native constructs. Like, is that a cloud networking company? Like, it's the waters are very muddy at this point.
Yeah, I see like the likes of Broadcom, VMware. Is that do they include VMware and Amex VMware and
like NSX or something?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's NSX, right?
I would think so.
Yeah, but like, would you describe NSX as cloud networking? And and again, I worked on NSX and. Which is, NSX couldn't be more different than, like what F5 or Prosimo or Aviatrix does, right? So this is what I mean about like these cloud networking products and companies that actually do very different things.
Yeah. I feel like this is almost somewhat adjacent to like the kind of the evolution of where SD-WAN went. We had a few companies start out that were obviously pure SD-WAN companies, like, kind of in that kind of founding sector, so to say,
like Viptela
of the product, Versa.
Versa,
and there's one other one, Velo Cloud.
Velo.
And then, but then we started to see the likes of the major networking vendors just start like maybe, or maybe like I saw mainly networking vendors and like WAN optimization vendors. They would just
the WAN ops too.
they
Or
would
firewall
add,
vendors.
Firewall vendors. They would add like one feature, and now it's like, okay, well now this is SD-WAN. It's like I don't know, I don't know if you can really put your merit on that. Like that's just like
Yeah, and it was like it went from like being SD-WAN to being SASE to being ZTNA. It's
so quickly.
But even like sorry, it was like even SD-WAN, like, is that cloud networking? Because you used to think about SD-WAN and you had like your branch device, and you would say, oh, let's go and take all that my traffic to Office 365, and instead of backhauling back to my data center and then through my internet pipe, I send it straight to my over my local internet link. That's some form of kind of cloud networking as well. Not it's not the
Well, this is interesting too, because this is where we get into some other things where there's kind of a long-standing curiosity about, like, is SaaS cloud the same? Like, like when we talk about this all the time, where like customers are like, or Microsoft is like, we have so many million cloud customers, and it's like, well, I mean, they're Office 365 customers. I don't know if I would call them cloud customers. Sure, it runs on Azure, but I don't know if that makes them Azure customers. You know what I mean? Like, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, exactly. So, I guess let me ask you guys, like, where do you think cloud networking was invented?
I mean, like the CSPs.
I mean, ultimately, I think if we look at the evolution of cloud, kind of starting in the early days with the launch of S3, and then eventually, more things started or like using cloud and needed the natural progression, and eventually things needed to be able to talk to each other, right? And I don't remember, what was it. When did VPC launch? Was it like 2010, 2009?
Well, it's literally, so that's 25th of August 2009. I found Jeff Barr's announcement blog post.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
And it's just, you read it and it's like, wow, that's like close to 16 years ago, and how still relevant, well written, clear the blog post was about. But, being able to create a virtual isolated network connecting back to on-prem with a VPN. So that, for me, that feels like the origins, and I'm sure some people will disagree, but it feels like the origins of like cloud networking.
Yeah.
And then...
Well, here's the question though. Hold on real quick, because we gotta. Yeah. I'm waiting for the data center people to start screaming that, like, private cloud. What about private cloud?
Well, yeah. And you think, okay, I think the response to this was things like OpenStack, right? And
that's a very good point, actually. I think OpenStack would probably be, because I mean, we're really talking about a model. We're not just talking about private cloud as a data center that's not its own its own kind of abstracted workflow. Because to get to that on private, I think the first thing you would have been able to work with to do that would have been OpenStack, to try to abstract away the compute and stuff.
Yeah, and they have the Neutron or Quantum plugin, which was their way of creating virtual network. And again, I think that's my recollection, where it was in response to the cloud providers and taking off, and they wanted to cloudify the way networking was being consumed on-prem, right, to offer a similar kind of experience. But yeah, it's again, but what we still haven't really got to the definition of cloud networking, right?
No. We'll get there. We'll get there around 55 minutes or 60.
Well, it's funny because I think like cloud has always been used as pretty much as an abstraction, right? At the end of the day, there's still kind of, hardware and components running under the hood that we all are familiar with. But I feel like, the cloud initially was supposed to be this term that was like somewhat agnostic, and we had private cloud, we have public cloud, but like private cloud is a very, very different experience than public cloud. And I feel
we haven't gone there yet.
The terminology is kind of just shifted. Cloud, I mean, in my mind, cloud means public cloud. And what that ultimately translates to is, basically using vendor or service provider specific APIs to interact with their environment to get it to do what you want to do.
Right.
So
okay.
it's like,
Right.
I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, ultimately, you're always going to be able to do what they give you access to, right?
Just like an MSP.
Right. There's no super level of customization that you could do with a private cloud, right? So, I mean, that's the way it translates to me.
And I think that for me, cloud networking, it does involve some form of public cloud, because otherwise, the definition just becomes too broad.
Yeah, it's too generic.
Yeah. So
otherwise, it's just networking, really.
Right. You're just talking about networking.
Yeah. But I think what you said around like consuming the MSP's APIs. I feel like the first kind of real form of kind of cloud networking companies, like the likes of Aviatrix, was really about like filling a gap that the cloud networking, the MSPs, where the networking constructs had some limitations. So the startup were like, oh, let's go and create a product that fits this gap. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
100%,
I mean, it's, in fact, if you look at the history of our company, if you look at the features we rolled out first, it was all stopgap, fill in the blank, like these don't exist in the hyperscaler. And I think there will always be a limitation to what the hyperscalers can offer to customers just by the fact that they're hyperscalers, right? They can't give you the same granular level of control that you can give to, if they give it to you, they got to give it to everybody, right? So that's
because it's a service, right? Like hardware vendor can give you something off the shelf that does everything under the hood because you control all of that, and it's probably in your isolated environment, right? But if you're providing a service, there's only so much you can do for like with R&D development, things like that. It just takes so much more work to get to that level.
I think even every MSP has a different stance and culture towards networking. I feel like AWS was like so developer centric, and I don't know, like Google is like so proud of its networking, so proud of its backbone, and happy to share. Oh, look, we've got cables, under the Pacific Oceans. Look at that, it's amazing, and like they're just very, very proud of some of the networking and their pipes and their innovation around this. They take cloud networking. Yeah, they have a different perspective. I think that's the cultural aspect to the importance of networking.
Yeah, it's always cool when they show those things, but in my mind, whenever I see a service provider, specifically a cloud service provider, kind of toting about like what kind of connectivity they've built with undersea cables, all this kind of stuff, all that says to me at the end of the day is like there's capacity. Capacity will probably never be my problem, which is good. Doesn't change how I build networks, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, in the long run, the least interesting thing, well, not the least, but one of the most least interesting things to me in networking has been QoS. And if I don't need that anymore, then I'm very happy with that. So I think this is progression for sure. But I don't know, networking to me, the undersea cables, that's all cool. The CDNs, that's cool as well. But I'll be honest, that doesn't move the needle for me, in terms of cool technology.
So it's interesting, Nico. You have the observation that Google cares a lot about its networking, because I think that's true. What you said about is building the undersea cables. I think all of that is true. But like when I look at Google's the way that you as a customer have to consume Google's networking, to me it seems like extremely developer centric. Don't even the concept of global VPC, and specifically the idea that like we can just do it all for you. It seems like they really just want you to not care about networking, or just for me working with it, it seems, like the auto building VPCs where they'll auto do all your subnets for you. It seems to me like they were focused on more. So it's interesting that the opinion that you have that is different.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like I was at Cisco Live last week and I was showing a demo with a couple of colleagues which was like meshing a couple of Kubernetes cluster. One was on-prem, one was in the cloud, and we picked GKE because we thought actually from a networking perspective that was the easiest.
For sure. I think so.
Yeah.
With the global VPC and everything, the way they do it, I think GKE is the easiest.
Yeah. And, doing some cool, connecting meshing clusters together, doing some load balancing across site. That's a nice form of cloud networking. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm actually just getting into this myself because we're kind of doing some stuff with Kubernetes as well. So I've been so late. Like I know we had you on like almost a year ago now or something like that. It's been a while, and I was one of those things where I was like, I'll get around to it. And I didn't really get a chance until a few weeks ago. But the more I learn about it, the more interesting it is, especially the networking aspect of it. Even though it's like 90% of it is abstracted away, at least within the cluster. Certainly within the cluster it is.
Which is interesting from my perspective as it was my first time presenting at Cisco Live and I've been to Cisco Live many times, but I've been presenting at, KubeCon, for example.
Yeah.
And presenting our networking platform for Kubernetes, it's very different when you go to somewhere like Cisco Live compared to KubeCon.
Audience is very different.
Yeah, exactly. Very different audience. And like some of the KubeCon, they're I think more interested in like, what can you do with all this networking? Like, more about the application stuff. Can you do things like, I don't know, like canary testing and load balancing and introducing new version of my app, do some redirection, lots of different, more again, application centric. Whereas I go to Cisco Live and what the first question I get is like, show me a packet walk. Like, show me the headers. And, show me BGP, and it's just like,
oh boy.
But so yeah, it was, it's kind of again, the different culture, but what's I guess what I found like fascinating is, the platform and Kubernetes networking is about cloud native applications, right? And which is mainly containers and mainly like managed and orchestrated by Kubernetes. And I think that's one of the reasons we were invited in this in this vendor's analyst report is because we do networking for cloud native applications. So
right.
Does it qualify as is that a requirement to be cloud networking? Do you need to be able to support modern containerized applications? Or is that just a kind of a side aspect of it?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at this point where we probably, I feel like we don't want to fall, like, in the same direction like maybe security has, where there's there's so many different categories for things, like there's like so many acronyms, CNAP, all this kind of stuff. There's probably been 2 announced today as of recording.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But like I don't know if we wanted like venture into that territory where we have like ultimate levels of classifications to every one of these things. Like I mean, we're already there. We can generally talk about it, but there's just no like official. Once Gartner does it, then then it's real, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if I wanted to go that route. But I mean, ultimately, there is confusion. So the consumer at the end of the day is going to be the one that's confused when they hear this term, right? So it might be necessary. I don't know.
Actually, So this now you get me thinking though, because like Kubernetes, the whole thing with Kubernetes is that you can have this cloud native and Kubernetes like go together, right? The CNCF owns the whole thing. Like there's so much. It's joined at the hip, right? We say cloud native. You kind of wondered, now we have to like, okay, what the hell does cloud native mean? Like, in order to get to cloud networking, what the hell is cloud native? Because
we had a discussion on this as well.
We did with
Will a while back. Yeah, it's like I think it's strayed from what it used to mean or what it was intended to mean.
Because you can run a Kubernetes cluster on-prem, right? Or in a middle mile provider or something. I don't know how many people do that. To be honest with you, I think a lot of people consume the managed Kubernetes. Kubernetes is pretty complicated, but
actually, I mean, just again talking to customers at Cisco Live and KubeCon, so many are doing self-manage, cool. And very often on the like OpenShift or Rancher, and that's what I had so many conversations around this last week at Cisco Live. Again, it's about like, okay, I'm building my own Kubernetes cluster, managing my own on-prem. How do I connect to my Cisco ACI, for example?
Of course.
Any other fabric, but and that's
just outside the cluster. How are we making connectivity, right?
Yeah. How do we expose our applications? What's the best practices again around BGP and ingress, and make our cloud native applications accessible from the outside to the outside.
Yeah, it's funny because with Kubernetes specifically, right? For ingress specifically, you have to build. You need a load balancer service, like something for the ingress to the service you've done. So now like a load balancer now becomes part of cloud networking. Like like all these services, these extra services end up being part of cloud networking, right? It's not just networking anymore. There's all these services included.
And so is a service mesh or an ingress controller, is that cloud networking?
I think it has to be with Kubernetes specifically. I think it has to be, right? The service mesh especially. You've got your sidecar. You're building tunnels. You're just making a tunnel mesh with between clusters. With your sidecars.
That one almost ventures just into application networking to me.
Maybe.
I mean, at the
maybe.
end of the day, I guess like, what is that?
That's
but
fair.
Just network. It's turtles all the way down, right? Eventually it's the same thing, but I don't know. We're probably splitting hairs, but
no, I mean that's a fair point though. Application, because it's the application. Well, that's so. Yeah, I mean, now that you're asking yourself, God, this is getting so crazy because now you got to ask yourself. Yeah, it's almost Socratic in the whole in the method, right? Because then you have to say, well, is the Envoy, like for Istio, is the Envoy an application or is it a networking device or is it both?
Yeah. I mean, it's a proxy, right? So. It's kind of defining a category is just really hard when things keep evolving. But I think for me, I guess the characteristics of cloud networking, there are things that I think we can say, okay, like the one thing they all have in common for me is that they're API centric. That would be, I guess, my own personal take, and maybe I'm sure there are lots of cloud networking products that are maybe more consumed through a UI, but I think the aspiration should be that you consume your cloud networking, your networks are API built through an API.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that's. Well, what about Terraform? Did you consider that the same thing?
Yeah,
it's ISE, right?
That's it. Yeah, with an API, some form of automation, a playbook, a Terraform module.
Okay. Yeah.
That should be part of the goal when you start leveraging a cloud networking, is that you make it create a template or automate it. If you claim you have a cloud networking product and you don't have an API, then you're lying or you're mistaken.
Right. Or at the very least, if you're not if your product is not interacting with the cloud provider APIs to do the building, like that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think after I asked about the Terraform question, I realized that what you originally had meant when you said that. So yeah, it is APIs all the way down, right? That's how you generally interact with.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing it on CLI, whether you're doing it with their SDK, whatever that is, right? Terraform, it's an API call at the end of the day. So you asked a question on the notes here that I really wanted to get to, and I don't want to pick out a specific company, but like you had said, like essentially is Middle Mile a cloud networking company, somebody that provides connectivity to the cloud? Would we consider them a cloud networking company? You have an opinion?
You could argue, and again, I'm not. You could say like things like Equinix, Megaport. They provide some direct links to the cloud from on-prem to the cloud. I think they also enable you to connect your clouds together. So some form of inter-cloud connectivity. Now, I think because it's more of a physical layer to and from the cloud, I don't think it necessarily qualifies as such. I guess in my head it's more, cloud networking in my head is more about creating networks within a cloud environment that is then consumed by applications that live in the cloud, and like they can be virtual machines, they can be bare metals, they can be containers.
Okay. So
I think an important thing in that classification is they also provide the connectivity, like direct connectivity options for like SaaS providers as well, right? So that's like
they're an exchange
services running on cloud, but maybe you're not, getting into a private environment that you manage on top of cloud. So it's like, like what does that translate to?
Well, I also have to challenge or a little bit the idea that if Megaport connects two clouds together, but it's physical, that makes them not cloud networking? Because that then question is, so if I connect AWS to Azure and I do it over the internet instead of using, because there's no direct connect between AWS and Azure, that's obviously right. So is that cloud networking, or it's going over the internet? Are we counting the internet as a medium that what I mean?
But if we're thinking about like this concept of at least the CSPs provided networking options, you're basically building networking across their backbones, whatever services they've exposed. They allow you to build networking on their platform. What is different about that to Megaport or to Equinix? That's the exact same thing. Like they have an underlying, set of hardware, services,
backbone of something.
But the way but the way you interact with it is essentially the same. You make an API call and you say build this connectivity. So how is it not cloud networking at that point, right?
We're not saying you're wrong. I'd like to justify a little bit.
I suppose it's, you don't necessarily use their networks to run applications.
Okay, so it's that you're not building apps on their network on their
and maybe I don't know enough about what they do. I guess It's almost feels like a subcategory of cloud networking. Maybe this is how we kind of break it down, right? You got cloud networking as a kind of overall category, and then you've got the intercloud, and then you have the.
This shit's not easy, right? Like, there's a reason everybody struggles with it. These definitions is not easy. I think it's very hard to draw these lines and to figure out what lines to draw. So.
Yeah. And we talked, you were saying like, Cloudflare or maybe like CDN are not necessarily Akamai.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
really good question, man. That's a super good. That's even harder than the Megaport one by far, I think, or Megaport Equinix middle mile generally by far, because the CDNs are technically usually attached to the cloud backbone, but like they're not. So they're delivering content, right? That is
yeah.
over a network that is usually cloud based in some way, whether it be Cloudflare or directly connected, like with the AWS offers. Man, I don't know. What do you think, Chris? That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is tough, but I mean, that's one that I feel like has been around in some shape or form for a long time as well. Like even before
Oh
Cloudflare
yeah,
and Akamai were
CDNs.
playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I remember like back in the day, I used to work at a big MPLS provider, and like we got a lot of circuits from level 3, and level 3 had a lot of these kind of front door scrubbing services and things that are just very adjacent to what those providers do today, and obviously they have a much bigger footprint and things like that. So it's like, I don't know. Then, so does it? If that's the case, then did cloud networking start back then? Like what? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It is very hard to say, like, yeah, what started it all.
yeah.
But okay, so what about security then? Like, let's say, consistent security across cloud, is that a must? Is that like, because we can't talk about cloud networking without talking about cloud networking security.
Sure.
Is is encryption, is consistent networking across the multiple clouds
Yeah.
some form of requirement to say, okay, we do cloud networking?
So, yeah. Obviously, we work for Aviatrix, and we literally this is the this is kind of the mission statement of the company. So to put the company aside, I think even putting the company aside, I think if you're gonna this whole shared responsibility model that all providers have, customers are still in charge of their own data, right? The data that runs across their cloud networks. Now it's encrypted in the rack essentially, or across the backbone, or however you want to say it, on the cloud provider side. But ultimately a customer, but that, then you look at things like Salt Typhoon, the Salt Typhoon attacks, owning telecom networks and being able to just do man in the middle, captures of unencrypted traffic. So yeah, I mean, I do think it's a requirement in that a customer would be very foolish not to run some of their, do it themselves. I wouldn't trust the provider to secure all of my traffic. But is it quote unquote required, like from a technical RFC perspective, if you will? I mean, obviously not, right? Like the AWS supports GRE across, you build a GRE tunnel from a TGW Connect, for example. Like, so, and of course you can't do GRE in Azure, but that's because that's what they're using on the underlay, right? So
It's funny how many directions this can go in, because that's the first thought you had, Tim, about this. Like I call back to just when we were talking about like the different architectures that we see within cloud, and how it's a very strong fundamental shift with what we've been doing for 20, 30 years at this point.
Oh yeah, the loose coupling model.
Yeah, well, not even that. Like, I'm just talking, like, if we think of the concept of a global VPC, like, that's one big network that exists everywhere. Like, the difficulty to implement something in there like zero trust, which is a prominent thing, from a networking perspective, like doing that in a global construct that's just all meshed together at one point, like that becomes a conversation that's very difficult to get that in there, right?
What's your opinion, Nico?
Um, I I can't imagine doing like a global VPC back when I used to be like a network operator. Like, just imagine the difficulty of doing something that is so well crafted that like you get you deploy VPC in GKE, and you don't really care. Like you just, your application receive an
It just
IP
works.
address. It just works, and and that's just thinking back to the days where I had to connect multiple sites together and having to worry about addressing. And I think that's the beauty of like a really well designed cloud networking like GKE. But again, also providers also do it very well. But is all the intelligence and the automation under the hood to make it happen, and being able to replicate it on-prem is just about impossible.
Yeah, we've said that for. Well, I mean, even when Alex was here, that we used to talk about all the time that like the people that are going to win the game are going to be. Yeah, I know who is that. I don't know who that is either. The people who can, whatever company or companies finally are able to build the product that can reproduce that level of the consumption model of cloud, but in an on-prem data center, man, they're just going to win the game. Like it's just going to win the game. That's because it's impossible. It's like so impossible, but everybody would benefit from it. Like everybody would love that because nobody's going to be able to fully evacuate unless you started in the cloud. You're probably never going to truly leave all of your data centers behind, right? You're going to need something on-prem. So yeah, man, yeah.
I think it was very easy. Not easy, but it was easier, at least in the pre-cloud days, to kind of classify what type of networking like products and things were out in the market, because there was always this kind of delineation of like physical location, like branch routing, data center routing, or data center switching was a very different thing, right? That's like even if I just say that implies certain things about the hardware,
campus networking,
and about what if its capabilities are, right off the bat, right? Whereas cloud has just become this extension of IT, right? It's like everything runs there, right? So it's like it's incorporating the branch, the WAN, the like everything is there, right? So it's just like so convoluted.
Yeah. But I think maybe we just need a new vocabulary to this
more acronyms.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, we need to to separate it, because I think it just becomes very complicated, and then I end up having to answer a questionnaire from vendors, and the questions that maybe apply to me, to our products, don't apply at all to I don't know, like the likes of Arista or F5 or whoever.
So it's Gartner's problem, basically.
I think that's true, though. I mean, speaking of someone who's also had to fill out one of those 40-page reports, like there are definitely sometimes they'll ask a question or be like, explain your capability, and you're just sitting there like scratching your head, like tapping the pen on the desk, like, I got to put something here, but like our product really doesn't play in this particular space.
Yeah, well, one we had a question recently, which was, your product doesn't support like drag and drop. And
you're like, no, not exactly.
What?
And because like maybe there will be some products where you can do some kind of some
right, like a policy creation in a UI like or something, right?
Type thing,
yeah. But is that like? I'm not sure that's as a decision maker would think, I won't buy this product.
Gotta have that drag and drop, man.
I can't build rules if I can't drag and drop things in my UI that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. I don't know. So I know we're running out of time, but I don't know if we got to an answer, and I don't think the three of us are authoritative enough to make an answer for everyone anyway. But even for ourselves, it's very convoluted. It's very ephemeral. It's changing all the fucking time. Mm-hmm. It's almost like, and this is the problem with a lot of things, right? Not just networking, but also security, as we pointed out. It's very reductive, right? So in order to get to like the bare minimum, the MVP, definition, it becomes so reductive that you can almost sweep everything underneath it, which is what you're trying not to do, right? By defining it.
Yeah, I won't. Yeah, I won't even try. And I enjoy the diversity of cloud networking and the whole. Even a few years ago, the way I thought of the cloud networking is different from what I think of it now. And maybe, in the same 5 years time, like, I guess, what do you think like cloud networking will look like, and can you answer this without mentioning AI?
No.
No.
We got this far without saying AI. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, so, I mean, but yeah, we're not going to, I don't think, I don't even know, right? Like, it's almost like what's the word what I'm looking for? Like the singularity, like the technical singularity, like lies 5 years in the future. Now that AI is, everybody's freaking finding newer and newer things to do with AI, and we're getting closer and closer to to Skynet or whatever. Like, who can even say?
And that's something we have now seen in the past couple of years is in the vendor analyst asking, does your product support some form of AI?
Yep.
And I always like to kind of distinguish between, is it about AI for networking? Do we leverage some form of AI to optimize network traffic, predict patterns, or is it about making the network more robust, quicker for AI workloads?
Right.
And I think
That's it.
Both of them apply. I think both are requirements we're going to see more and more from not just kind of cloud networking, but broader networking products. Is, can your network cater for AI workloads, and does your network leverage AI to provide better performance?
Right.
Yeah. So this is interesting because the cloud the CSPs are like whole hog on getting rid of and basically developing their own silicon for, which they've been doing for a while, but specifically for AI. Like, they don't want to be beholden to NVIDIA or any of the anybody for GPUs and GPU. So doesn't that also come with a requirement then to, and maybe this is why all these we reported on the news a few weeks ago that Microsoft is planning to spend $100 billion on their upgrading their infrastructure, and like AWS said 75 and Google said like 80 or something like that. Do you think a lot of that is going to build the networking for AI, meaning networking to support AI workloads? Do because people may not be building their own, or do you think we'll see a reduction, like with the DeepSeek thing was like 50-50, which is what I kind of expected, which, like, yeah, there are things that are good, but also a lot of it was kind of snowed over. It was a snow job and, bearing the lead on a lot of the costs and stuff. But it still represents a movement forward towards making it more, what's what I'm looking for, affordable, essentially, to do AI. So do you think they'll just kind of meet in the middle somewhere, or do you see, well, what do you think we're going to see first?
I am equally as excited and dubious about AI for networking. I guess for a couple of reasons, and one is I wrote a blog post about machine learning for networks 15 years ago.
Wow.
I remember being I got the chance to sit in a room with like a Cisco fellow, which is like the highest engineering level at Cisco, and he was presenting some machine learning capabilities that he was working on at the time. Well, that was 2000 and
It would have been 2010 or so.
No, it was more around like maybe 2015, but it was 10 years ago, but it was like way before
before this happened.
Yeah. And I got very excited about the possibilities, but nothing from what I know kind of came out of it, right? Maybe it was too early. But clearly, we've seen like some amazing advancements, and I'm a more than daily user of ChatGPT, but I still have some I really want to see like really applicable use cases. Like show me, okay, networking as being able to help us make a better decision for this packet, right? This
Yeah.
packet was supposed to go and follow the routing table, and I could no, hang on, we'll just go and send it elsewhere because of
Yeah,
some
conditions,
decision.
whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It costs less.
Yeah. Just I want to see some more like evidence. But I'm excited, and I think just it's going to really help us create better products, help us develop our software faster, for sure. But I still want to see a bit more before, let's say, I trust AI to enforce some security policies for me, for example. That scares a lot.
That's the one. Who was it? It was John. We had John Capabianco on there. We were asking him the same thing about, when is it going to be the point where somebody's going to trust this agent, like an AI agent, enough to actually go do like network level changes that could just blow up the whole network? Like, where do we get to that part where somebody's okay with pressing that button and walking away, essentially? So I think I'm with you. Like, I think it's going to still be a long time before we get to that, no matter what. Right. So
we're too big of control freaks for that at this point.
Well, network engineers have to be, because those 5 nines of uptime are on us.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it there. Nico, as always, it's awesome having you on, and I'm really glad we could do it. We'll have to do it again in the future.
Anytime.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Any final thoughts there, Chris, before we roll up?
No, I was just going to say, Nico, where can people find you online?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. Again, that's probably where I'm most active. So LinkedIn.com/Nicolas Vibert.
We'll get it in the show notes too.
Yeah.
All right.
Happy to connect with people.
All right, everybody. Well, I don't know if we got to the exact answer, but hopefully somebody found some useful information in all of this. As always, I'm Tim. This is Chris, our guest Nico, and thanks for listening or watching. And we'll see you next time.